The Supreme Court has ruled in the case of the baker who refused to bake a gay wedding cake, and they have ruled in favor of the baker. But as usual, the truth of the decision is being sort of misrepresented in media reports. It was a 7-2 ruling. You saw 2 liberal justices join the 5 conservative justices. And to remind you about the story, this is about a Colorado baker who refused to bake a gay wedding cake for what they called religious reasons. And this was a decision before we got it from the Supreme Court that had the potential to really set precedent for letting people say they are exempt from non-discrimination laws because their religious beliefs contradict some of those laws. And of course, it would follow that if you can be exempt from non-discrimination laws on the basis of sexual orientation, why couldn't your religious beliefs also exempt you from race-based non-discrimination laws? Potentially very dangerous. But the court, if you read the actual decision rather than the headlines from yesterday's and today's articles, the court didn't actually say when there can be exemptions to non-discrimination laws for religious reasons. Let me say that one more time. The court did not decide about exemptions to anti-discrimination laws. What the court did say is that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, when they adjudicated this case and said the baker violated the anti-discrimination law, showed impermissible hostility, okay? So if people are going to hear about this and say, great, all bakers and other service providers now can just flout anti-discrimination laws and say, I don't work with gay customers or I don't work with black customers because of my religion, they could quickly find themselves in trouble because that's not what the court said, okay? The real question that the court did not answer is whether baking a cake is the type of act that's protected by the First Amendment, by free speech. That's the real question, and the court did not actually answer that in their ruling. All they said is the Colorado Civil Rights Commission that originally adjudicated this was hostile to the religion of the baker in a way that was not okay. They weren't neutral on religion when deciding the case. That is very different than saying you can cite religion as a reason to legally ignore non-discrimination laws. Really important, Pat, that people understand what the court did decide and what it did not decide.
Yeah, that's why they're calling this a narrow decision. Some
Right.
people read the headlines and were confused because it's a narrow decision, and yet they voted 7-2. Remember, Donald Trump Jr. took to Twitter and was very confused over this.
Oh, yeah.
It just applies in this specific case. You can't make any broader implications from it like you could from 2015 gay marriage decision or the
Sure.
recent sports gambling decision.
And even the plaintiffs in the case conceded it actually wouldn't be okay for a baker to refuse to sell anything for gay weddings, that would actually be a different story altogether. It is specifically because the cake baking is possibly an artistic endeavor and because of the treatment from the Colorado Civil Rights Commission that the decision went this way. This has not changed what it is, at least for now, which is that businesses that are open to the public have to serve everybody, regardless of race, regardless of national origin or nationality, religion. Sexual orientation in some states is also a protected class in that vein. I believe that there will be blowback from people misunderstanding this ruling and openly discriminating, and they will very quickly find themselves on the other side of court decisions because the issue here is that of the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, according to the Supreme Court ruling. It's not a great decision. I'm not saying that I like the results, but what I think is most important to understand is this is not the terrible news for LGBT people that some are painting it out to be. I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's important not to do the sky is falling stuff because of this particular decision, because it is a very narrow decision about the specific way in which this one case was handled. It is not carte blanche to start saying, we don't serve gay people, we don't serve black people, we don't serve Jewish people, or anything of that nature. Send me your thoughts. I want to hear from you about this. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman, and the show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. Today's episode of the show is made possible in part by Kronecker Wallace, which is a small independent book publisher with a passion for both the history of science and the actual visual design of books. Kronecker Wallace has been attracting a lot of attention for their reissues of iconic scientific works, like, for example, Isaac Newton's Principia, Euclid's Elements, and a beautiful collection of over 300 drawings by prominent 19th century scientist Alexander von Humboldt from throughout his world travels. Kronecker Wallace's motto is, "Books are something to touch and look at, not just read." I can get behind that. People in the audience know. What sets Kronecker Wallace apart from other publishers of historical scientific books is their dedication to craftsmanship and designing books that are also actually stunning from a visual aesthetic perspective. And these are for people who love science, but also for people who love books themselves and appreciate the art of bookmaking. You'll want to check out their collection for yourself at KronekerWallace.com. That's KronekerWallis.com. You also have until midnight Eastern on June 6th to pre-order their reissue of Isaac Newton's Optics on Kickstarter. I've put a link to that and their main website underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube.